like Ed McMahon.
I like Ed McMahon too. Yeah, we get good comments, but we're either going to do this as a podcast or, in fact, I think we're going to ask people here what their thoughts are. Okay.
Yeah.
So we are now live. You should be seeing us somewhere live. We're going to go back here and we are going to start recording again. Cool. And you see us. Hi, everybody. Okay.
Hi.
We have officially moved outside.
Yay!
It's spring.
Outside.
Plastic cups. Plastic cups are wonderful.
Chairs on the deck.
So we've been usually at Karen's house. Now we're at my house. And as you can see, no leaves, but over the weeks, we're gonna see it. You're gonna see beautiful sunflowers. I am gonna plant behind here.
And the lights will come on.
The lights will come on. Yes.
Is
So
that all winter?
yes, I did.
Oh, I did.
I do have to like clean them. They've got all green, like, I don't know what that's called.
Gook.
It's called green gook. Anyway, hi everybody. I am so glad you are joining us. We are Karen and Allison. For those of you who are new to us, we do this every Thursday, almost every Thursday.
Every day, but we actually
we only come online.
Show it on Thursday.
Exactly. But we do this every Thursday and we have inspirational guests who are just doing amazing things, or women who are helping us with different things we need to know. I am telling you right now, and Karen made me promise, next Thursday, I'm getting my second COVID shot. Now, rumor has it the second is the worst, and I'm getting it at 10 a.m. And I'm hearing that I'm gonna be out for the count. She wants me to come on.
Oh yeah.
She wants me to be like Weekend at Bernie's and just prop me up. And you do that to me too.
All in the name of comedy.
Wait till you get your second. I'll do the same thing. I'll just like have you waving. It'll be flat Karen.
All in.
Anyway, so tonight we've moved to red.
Rose.
Yes, little sheep.
A little sheep. It's called.
It is
Little Sheep of France.
The Little Sheep of France.
I didn't know it was called that. I just picked it because I like the sheep. They're very cute.
They are cute, and it's a good wine. So we're liking this,
right? And we're kicking off rosé season.
We are kicking off rosé season. And maybe we will go live. Maybe we'll like start traveling and do one of these at a vineyard. How cool would that be? We could do a retreat to a vineyard. That would be very cool.
Done.
I'm also saying to Karen, I am seriously considering moving this to a podcast or to Clubhouse so that we can get more people on. So I'd love whoever's on to say hi and let me know your thoughts. And also, if you're not on live, hit replay when you do watch this. And if you have questions or anything, just comment because I'd love to see. Anyway, we want to get started. Wait, you got to get the video.
My bad.
Okay, we want to get started, and Karen and I have known Traci Provost for a while, and I can't think of a more tough topic and a more awkward. Like, I think money is harder to talk about than sex. Like, I seriously think so. I think it embarrasses us. I think we have so much like shame and guilt around money, way more than we do sex.
Or just shame around the fact that you don't understand it that well.
Right, embarrassment.
Like, when I go to my tax guy, I told him this last year. I was like, I feel like an idiot when I walk in here because you ask me all kinds of questions and I don't know. And I thought that if I just wrote you a check and threw my stuff on your desk, that would be an end of the conversation.
Yeah. And it's not.
You end up feeling like a bonehead.
Right. So this is probably going to be more than one conversation with Traci, but we wanted to just start at the basics, like fear of finance and getting past it. And I just wanted to tell really quickly, like, this was my thing. Like, as I said, I was, 28 when I built my first, pretty significant 6-figure business. I was rocking it. And then I got married and I became the primary breadwinner and he ran up the credit cards. And one of the things I need to tell you guys is, even if you get divorced and even if a judge says you need to split the debt, the credit card company doesn't give a rat's butt. Okay. The credit card company just sees your name on it. And so even if a judge says to pay, there's no way of enforcing that. So my credit was destroyed. I spent every dime getting a divorce. My credit rating went just flopped. Like, I was in really, really bad financial straits. And I had never been like that. Like, my parents raised me to be so responsible. So I was so mortified I had to declare bankruptcy, and I was so mortified because my parents had never taught me to be like that. And it got to the point where I had such a fear of money. Like I wouldn't look at my bank account. I wouldn't look at bills. I just had them piling up because I was just so embarrassed, and I became paralyzed. And I had to push myself. I had to physically say, you are going to look at this. And I had to build this as a pattern and as a habit of doing it every morning. And thank God my son Spencer, who has intellectual disabilities, he has a bank account. And every morning he's like, Mom, can we check my bank account? And I'm like, yay, like I am teaching my kids to be responsible. So this is what Traci's talking about. Traci, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Great to be here. I'm fans of both of you. So
Aw.
great job. Great
Well,
job to you.
thank you. So let's start with, like, do you hear this from a lot of people?
Yeah. This is what I call our money story. And it to me, it's where the emotional meets the financial piece of it. Because what I see so often is and by the way, whoever is on here tonight, kudos to you for saying, I'm gonna get on and listen to this and try and take a baby step forward. So give yourself credit for that if you're here tonight. But I often say to clients, let's talk about your money story. You don't necessarily talk about it with me, but think back to the triggers that maybe made you have the reactions and the relationship to money that you do now. So yours is very clear, and it's very multi-tiered. For some, it's being a child and not having enough growing up. For others, especially in Fairfield County, it's having abundance. So how do you even think about getting on a spending plan or anything like that? So I always encourage people to take the first step and spend a few minutes. And yes, it's kind of hard, but just writing down some ideas that may have been triggers in your past. And they could be your past, meaning a divorce last year, or your childhood, or going to college, you couldn't go out a lot because you were on scholarship, that sort of thing. I think when you can start at that very base fact, it'll help open up a lot of dialogue within your head of how you want to change that money story so that you no longer have fear and that you're able to start to open your eyes and kind of look at it. So it's a big piece.
And it's funny because that's what I talk about in my coaching practice, is the limiting beliefs. And it may not be the money story. It may be what your parents told you of, you were the smart one, you were the athletic one, or, be careful because the other shoe always drops, so don't get too comfortable. So yeah, it's all of those limiting beliefs that have creeped up with us throughout the years.
And I think, you hit on something that I see a ton of, especially during COVID. Like, people may have therapists, but therapists are just dealing with the emotional piece of it. We as women are trying to find our truth. Where do we belong? What makes us tick, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I am a huge believer in coaching. And there's all different kinds of coaching. And there's also bad coaching and good coaching, just like there's good financial people and bad financial people. But I am a huge believer that if you can work with somebody who deals in a holistic approach in your life, it's not just a job or your money or your marriage or your children. It's your life. And so what I've seen is coaching has been extremely beneficial to my clients who have chosen to say, okay, I'm ready to do the work. Let's do this.
And it is the work, right?
Yeah,
like
it is work.
Yeah,
for sure.
So what was your money story?
We had money growing up. I grew up in a kind of an affluent town too. But my dad was a business owner. So when he had a great business going, we had plenty of money and a boat and a summer place and all that stuff and a golf membership. And then when he didn't have money, it kind of all went away. So it was sort of that, oh, okay, it can come and it can go. And the other part of it would be that when my mom got divorced, she didn't really follow through on it. And she ended up still, struggling to this day financially. My sisters and I support her, but I think she handled it in a way that she thought was, not too conflict based, but at the same time, real financial struggle, a lot of it.
Did they discuss finances with the family?
I don't think so. I think it was very traditional. I mean, they married in the 50s. I think it was dad makes the money and manages the bills, and mom manages the
Yeah.
house and doesn't know much about the money. It was very much that scenario.
So to that point, and I don't just work with divorce clients, but those are the ones that I feel are a lot of times they're the neediest and the most uneducated, that because especially if they weren't
Yeah.
involved in the finances. And
Mhm.
I always use this analogy of, even if, one person stays home with the family and one person does the finances, you should both be 100% involved in the knowledge of it.
Yes.
Yep.
He or she can still pay the bills, he or she can still take care of the kids.
Mhm.
But it's like, if the parent who is taking the child to the doctor, because they're the ones that has the time to do that, I think they're probably coming home and telling the other spouse what happened at that doctor's appointment.
Right.
And I see more times than not, the conflict comes when not both parties are knowledgeable. And I'm not saying you have to know what an ETF is or a mutual fund. I'm saying to know, like, okay, our house is worth this.
Exactly.
Our checking account is worth this. And the other thing in Connecticut, it's like, if you have, it's a fair and equitable state, but clients will come to me and they'll say, but my spouse has everything in their 401k.
Yeah.
I don't have anything. And that's worked out, obviously, because it's a fair and equitable state. But I still feel like, even if a spouse is working and has a 401k, the other spouse should know, what do you have
Right.
in there?
Yeah, and it's so funny, Tracy, because I run across that with my coaching clients as well. Of they just don't feel like they need to. They trust the other partner, and I always tell them, this is not anything about trust. This is knowledge is power, and if you're going to be a strong woman, you need to understand this. Forget even divorce. God forbid your husband drops dead. Like,
Right.
how are you going to manage when you don't even know what bills are out there or what your mortgage is?
And it's a red flag if the spouse who controls those finances is not willing to share.
Oh yeah.
And it's even harder when they say, oh, don't worry about it, you don't need to
Yes.
know. And I
Yeah.
work with so many women who are college educated, they have their MBAs,
Yes.
but they were never involved in the finances because their husband worked on Wall Street.
Yep.
So they're like, I got it, honey, I got it,
Yep.
I got it. And then all of a sudden they're kicking themselves in the foot saying, how could I have let this happen?
Yes.
So for your viewers who are still married, that is a really, really important component to the whole relationship, in my opinion.
And I would recognize too that it's kind of, it's very easy to see why some spouses would just go, great, you're taking care of it. It's kind of nice to have, as a mom, a woman, a wife, whatever, to have one less thing to worry about. However, it's important.
Yeah. And I kind of break it down, especially for the spouse that's maybe not as involved in the finances, but then they make that decision either by force, or they choose to say, I want to know what's going on. I kind of want to understand this. And I break it down kind of into 4 pillars. And it's pretty easy, and I'll follow up in a second, but it's what you owe, it's what you own, it's what you earn, and it's what you spend.
Mhm.
Those are the only 4 things you really need to know.
It is pretty simple. You're right.
It's pretty simple, right? But the thing I say about that is, I often recommend, you can't take all 4 quadrants at once. Take off a little tiny bite of one and start there. We all have to start small when we're overwhelmed by something that causes fear. And I think fear is for all of us, especially after COVID. Do I have enough for retirement? My marriage is on the rocks. What's going to happen?
Yes.
We don't have enough money for college.
Yes.
So many things. So I say you have to bite it off into little bits, but I can guarantee you, when you start to do that, your life will become much better from a financial perspective. And that's always my goal.
You're right. And we've been talking a lot in this group about the mental overload and the mental overwhelm women have. And it's right. Like, you have to take it in small, manageable bites, little pieces, so that you can get to your goal. And, I think that's the other thing. I think women are not thinking about, where do I want to be? Do I want to start my own business? Do I want to go back to school? And where the heck's that money going to come from?
Exactly. If they don't know, they can't make that decision in the dark, because then they're worried about, well, I can't go back to school. I don't know if we have the money, and I don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
And so I feel that's super important. And one of the things we were talking about before we came on air is, we've tended to use a lot of credit, a lot of plastic during COVID because people weren't taking cash. So we had to use a credit card or a debit card or however that looks. And back in the day with our great grandparents, there was just cash. That's what they used. And they did pretty well. And so one of the things I really recommend if you're not ready to handle the 4 quadrants is start to use cash a little bit at a time. So if you're used to using it, never and just paying off. And again, you may have, a credit card with points on it. So you want that. You can manage through that. But I feel like using cash and credit is important because it gets you back to the tactical visual of handing over $200 for that pair of shoes that you really don't need because you've got 30 in your closet, right? And that kind of takes me to the Marie Kondo, is that her name?
Yeah.
Where I say to clients who have excess shopping, they love to shop, is I'll say to them, whatever that thing is that you love to collect. I had a client who loved cashmere sweaters. And I would say, I want you to go into your closet and I want you to pull out all your cashmere sweaters and I want you to look at them. Do you feel as jubilant and joyous as you did the day you bought them? And, that's a really interesting thing for people to do. And again, if they've got 200 cashmere sweaters, they probably can't do the whole thing, but it's a really good exercise because it helps you start to see whether it's Amazon or everything that we can buy online. We don't even have to leave our house.
Right.
It helps you start to see like, wow, maybe I don't really need that. And look how many clothes in my closet still have the tag on them. So it's starting with little steps to help you start to get your arms around what you spend. The first part of the quadrant, right?
Right. Well, it was interesting because I had to declare bankruptcy. So I had no credit cards, none for 2 years. I only used a debit card.
I can't even imagine.
That was it. So if I didn't have it,
right, Allison?
Oh my God, that's what changed it.
Yeah.
That's what changed it.
Yeah.
And it was so funny. People would say, "Oh, you mow your own lawn. Why don't you get somebody?" I'm like, "Do you want to give me the money?"
Right.
So yeah, no, I'm doing it. And so I do. Sometimes it takes that harsh reality. That's what it is.
What
and
what you
I
need.
say with credit cards, I recommend, apart from my client that couldn't walk to the mailbox without a phobia of getting the bills out and then sticking them in a drawer because she couldn't deal with them, and then the creditors calling and she had no idea. I say, take credit cards out of your wallet, maybe just keep one, right? And then the other thing I recommend is that you go online to either your bank account or your credit cards, check out the balances, maybe once a week, twice a week if you're really busy, or twice a month, and look at how much you spent, look at where it went, and you also just want to make sure that those charges are yours.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of that going around and we just get so busy and we just get the statement and I had a client who double paid her Eversource, and she brought the bill to me and she said, "Oh my gosh, could my electric have gone up this much?"
Well, yes, with Eversource it could.
Yes.
But she didn't even realize that in her last bill, it said she had the carryover amount, which she had paid for, but it didn't post. And so she double paid it. So that's an important thing to know how to read your statement and to make sure it's accurate. And, and that's not a hard thing to do. It just needs to carve out. And I sometimes say, like, take an hour Sunday morning with your cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And, just say, I'm going to go look at my credit cards.
Yep.
Or I'm going to look at like what I spent last month.
Right.
Little things to give a little bit more eye-opening intellect into your financial life.
Now, Traci, what's your thoughts? Because I always tell my coaching clients they need to have their own account because they need to have their own credit. What's your thoughts on his, mine, and ours?
Well, again, so I go back to, I'm fine with his, mine, and ours, as long as there's an open dialogue between them, between the two. I always will recommend that a spouse who perhaps doesn't work is able to get a credit card in their own name, not from their spouse, because that's a different thing. But for clients who are just using their spouse's credit card, like they don't even know where to start. And you know, one of my favorite sites, which you probably use too, Allison, is creditkarma.com.
Oh yeah.
It's free. It gives you your credit score for free. It shows you changes. You can set up alerts to tell you if something has changed in your credit score.
Yeah. I actually look forward to getting those emails now.
And again, for me, if you are a couple who is able to share financial information, you both run your credit report and you sit down a really intimate, sexy dinner and talk about you know, does this look okay, or can I see yours, and looking at what they have too. I mean, that's the open communication that to me has caused so many marriage breakdowns. Is that, and I won't say financial infidelity, because it not always is, but financial secrecy or power of not wanting to share that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And you know, we talked before we got on too of that, not only how many credit cards we've been using and non-cash during the year, but also that adrenaline rush of Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's going back to that for a second. I have plenty of clients where we're trying to create a spending plan and the line item is Amazon.
Right.
It's not toiletries. It's not paper goods. It's Amazon.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to manage the way that software is set up. And Karen, we were talking about that.
Mhm.
So like if I have a client who is divorced, I will often say, if you're at Amazon, I want you to break your purchases, because they're going to deliver. If you're with Prime, they're going to deliver one thing or 10 things to you, right? So break down your kids' expenses on one credit card. Put your expenses on another credit card. It makes it a lot easier to reconcile at the end of the month.
That's a good point.
And I mean, there's a lot of that. That's why Amazon is a blessing and a curse for people. Like my son, who's 30, he loves to shop online. I mean, because he knows he can get it and return it, and I mean, good. He does well, but it's not something that is a really good, a good habit to have.
Yeah.
I think that it's almost like when you're on Amazon, you should make a list, just like we would if we went to the grocery store, of things that you need. And then it really becomes like when you're looking at that list, like, oh, I probably really don't need that. And I need that. So it's really a lot about doing an inventory of yourself. It's your relationship with money. It's about how much you're willing to do the work to be involved. And I will say, I will not take a client who does not want to be involved in their finances.
Right. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. It's just, for the most part, we as women are going to be around longer than our spouse.
Yeah.
And I feel like it is as critical as getting a mammogram, as anything we do with our health.
Yep.
That is just as important. And guess what? If I can learn finances, anybody can learn finance.
So tell us about your background.
So I was in a family golf apparel business for many years, and we had a group of investors that came in and wanted to buy it. And it was my father, my brother, my sister, and myself. And so my father, who was the patriarch, said, yeah, I'm ready to retire. I'm out. And so the three of us signed a 3-year contract, and I stayed on. And after 3 years, I didn't like what they were doing to the product. They were kind of cheapening the product. So I said, I'm out. Well, when I got out, I had some A shares and B shares. I had insurance policies. I think I'd spoken to my financial advisor once in 10 years. I don't even know. I put my husband through graduate school at Yale. So I wasn't sure how to fund that. So we just paid for it. I never had a budget. So the kids needed something, we'd go out. And we're not wealthy by any means. We're very middle class. But it wasn't something I knew. It wasn't something I understood. And living in Fairfield County, where you're surrounded by so much wealth, it's like a fantasy land about the money people have to spend.
Yeah.
And so I had a woman who was referred to me, and I met with her. She completely changed my financial life.
Wow.
I have been It's been 11 years now. And she said to me, you should go and help other women. And at the time, I didn't really understand the industry. And I am so glad I did, because I love what I do.
That's
And
great.
I was once that person who had no idea about personal finance. No idea. So
Interesting.
that's why I say to you, I was in the apparel business. I wasn't in
Yeah.
finance.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science. It's the willingness to learn. It's the willingness to want to be empowered to know that, I say this often, when you get divorced, marriage is about love and money. It's about love, right? Divorce is about money and the kids.
It's so true. So true.
Right. So you really have three components. You have the financial, the legal, and the emotional.
Yeah.
And I just, in my 11 years of doing this, it's just been my mission to encourage women who don't want to be involved in their finances, who just keep saying, well, he's going to take care of me when it happens.
Yeah.
I have good friends like that. And I'm like, I'm not sure we can be friends anymore, because this is really important to me.
Yeah.
If nothing else, a plan B. I mean, that's great if that's your plan A, but plan A doesn't always happen. So,
and I think so many of us today, and I was saying this to a client the other day, because she hasn't worked in a while. Women today are so lucky with the choices they have.
Yes.
If they decide to find something to do, if they decide to go, we kind of burn out from PTA. We kind of burn out when our kids are gone, the friends change and all that stuff. There's so many opportunities for women to find what it is they want.
Exactly.
And so I always say, if you're willing to do that work on yourself, also parallel it with the financial piece of it. Because
I love it. Daniela just wrote, a man is not an investment strategy. So awesome. True. Spot on, Danielle.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, that's the clients I work with too, who are at that point where they're not in the PTA anymore and their kids are out. And it's like, now what? What am I going to do?
Right.
And that's a big part of it. And I'll tell you what, the other thing I think is so important is, like I said, my son has intellectual disabilities. The academic learning for all of us isn't half as important as the practical learning. I want to make sure that my kids understand financial health, understand how to budget. Those to me are the critical factors that they don't get taught enough.
You're so good. It's why I've admired you for so long.
Aww.
Because it is so true. I do Google Alerts.
Yeah.
So I set up Google Alerts for women in finance, and I get articles every day you can get them as often or not as often as you want. Right. And even if you're taking 5 minutes to read an article about women and money or concepts about personal finance, it can't hurt you. It can only, of course there is bad information out there, but I feel it can only help you. And there's so much knowledge out there, and there's so much free resources.
Yes.
Even the apps for personal finance. I think Mint's the probably the most popular, but you have like Pocket Guard, you have Good Budget, you've got a bunch out there. And it's starting out simple. And I'm happy for anybody who's watching. I have a very simple Excel spreadsheet that I usually start my clients with, and it seems kind of overwhelming, but it's a really good start, because I don't know how you move forward in a independent way if you have no idea what you're spending on a monthly basis. And to me, and I say this to clients, look, they're like, am I going to be okay? Am I going to be okay? And I always say to them, it's not what you have, it's what you spend. Right? It is absolutely what you spend.
Yeah.
So you can have $1 million, but if you're spending $100,000 a year, you got 10 years.
Right. Exactly.
So
the first point for single or married is face it. Sit down, get a cup of coffee on a Sunday morning, put it out in front of you and look. And I would just add, like I said, force yourself, make it a habit every morning just to look at your bank account. Even if you haven't bought anything, just every morning, make it a habit, because once it becomes a habit, it's not as scary.
That's absolutely true.
Motivation.
And also, I think, there's plenty of support groups out there. You've got plenty of Facebook group books for women, Facebook groups with women on money. But even, you said it best, Allison. People would rather talk about sex or bad sex or whatever than money, right?
Yeah.
And yet, so maybe you don't want to use the hard numbers, but find somebody, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's somebody that you know who's in finance that you could talk to ask questions or to get some help. You don't necessarily have to divulge, I've got X number of dollars.
Right.
What we're looking for is, how do I emotionally manage through being fearful of my personal finances to try and get to the next step?
Exactly. And that's one of the big things I do with coaching is you have to manage that fear, because when it's in your head, it just becomes overwhelming. And I would say too, journal those feelings about that money and that fear around that money, because when you get it out, it helps.
That's a great addition to looking for your money story, writing it out. What are some things that you think about as a, as a child, or as you're in your divorce, or what are those things that trigger you that you need to address? Because we can all work through stuff, and women especially can overcome difficult issues. But it's those little voices in our head that say, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't have time. I'm not smart enough.
Yep.
We all are. We all are, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, this has been great.
Yes.
I am so excited. We had tons of people on. Traci, what is the best way to reach you?
They can reach me at Traci with an I, Traci at traciprovost.com.
Okay, and we'll put that in the comments too.
Yep. If they're in this group, they can also find me in this group.
Perfect.
And reach out. And I'm happy, my colleagues think I'm crazy because I offer an hour consultation for no charge, no matter what it is. But you can't talk to somebody about your money story and everything going on in 30 minutes. You just can't do it. So, so that's and my office is in Westport. So I'm doing, in person, and I do Zoom. I like in person because that's just how I work.
Yep.
But Zoom works as well. So thanks.
Terrific, because we do have people in this group all around the country. So
yeah, I have clients all over too. So that's great.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody. So maybe next Thursday I will be awake. Maybe she will be propping me up after my Moderna shot. We will see. Exactly. She'll just prop me up. But Traci, thank you so much. And everybody have a great evening.
Thanks for having me.
Take care. Bye.
Bye, guys. Oh, Dex, I'm so glad you kept